Welcome on in. Thank you for being here. Look around you at all the folks. I say, look around you. If we were in a building together, look around you at all the folks that are here. If you would, though, look at all the folks who are joining on the screen right now. Just make sure you acknowledge each other. This is an online community dominantly, and sometimes we can miss that real personal connection. So make sure you connect with people, say hello to each other, like each other's comments, put the little heart up. As we move into the session at the beginning and then toward the end, if you click hearts and you click likes, and if you're watching this, other people are able to see your activity, and it really will lead them and some traffic toward this way. And if you think this is a valuable community, a valuable message, a valuable space where people can be their authentic, true, and essential selves, and you enjoy this, you get something out of it, the odds are somebody in your life would too. So make sure you share that. I was trying to think if there are any announcements that we need to go over, and there really aren't. Tonight we are looking at Tao Te Ching, verse 69, and I am looking forward to sharing some aspects of that. This has been a good study for me to return to. Man, how many have enjoyed the lesson from the blessing and the lesson in today's meditation together? I don't know how many of you needed that and it's helped you out. It's definitely helped me. Just a moment here, hold on. It's always fun when technology does some weird stuff. All right. Oh, man. Okay. It's perfect. Interruptions are perfect, really. There's an old song that we used to sing all the time in the church that I grew up in, and the churches I grew up around. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. It's actually a song that I didn't realize is sung in unity churches as well. So if you recognize the piano song that's playing right now, that's the song. And I wanted this to be our song for gathering this evening in a time of centering prayer before we get into the lesson. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on us. Teach us to love the way you do. Show us how to be more centered in the pure presence and gather us close. There's another old song in the church that I used to sing all the time. Draw me close to you. Never let me go. Bring us in close. And most of all, especially along with this evening's lesson, teach us to love the way you do. Teach us to love with the flow of life and in the flow of life. Teach us to love flowing with the Tao, the way. Allow yourself for just a moment to return to this morning's phrase that I've used throughout the day today. I am the knowing, not the conditions, situations, or the circumstances that are known. I am the knowing, not the situations, circumstances, and conditions that are known. We remind ourselves in this present moment that the I am that I am dwells within us, brings us into perfect peace, brings us into the stillness, shows to us, reveals to us the beauty of life itself. And we say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so it is, and so it is. Before we were interrupted by the clock, I was saying, I hope that that concept has been useful to you today. That idea, I am the knowing, I am the awareness. I'm not the conditions or the situations or the circumstances that are surrounding me or that I feel. We feel those feelings, we sense the emotions, we have the thoughts, but you are not the thoughts. You're not just a container for thoughts. You're a divine being having a human experience, a spiritual being having an earth visit. That's good news. That's good news, good news, good news. Okay, if you would, if you have your book on the Tao, if you will go ahead and grab it. We're going to look at verse 69, and this is another concept that I have talked about many, many times, and I learned this concept from the Tao. I remember that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. became a hero of mine a few years ago. He was villainized by some people that I grew up around as not being what he said he was, but I came to find Dr. King as a hero. Not just a civil rights leader, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that he did, but just as a person, his doctrine, his belief, the way he lived his life, the way he attempted to teach others to live their life. And one of the statements that he made was, I have opponents, but I don't have enemies. He lived his life according to verse 69 of the Tao Te Ching. And so I'll invite us into that reading now. The generals have a saying, rather than make the first move, it is better to wait and see. Rather than advance an inch, it is better to retreat a yard. This is called going forward without advancing, pushing back without using weapons. There is no greater misfortune than underestimating your enemy. Notice this line. Underestimating your enemy means thinking that he or she is evil. Thus you destroy your three treasures and become an enemy yourself. When two great forces oppose each other, the victory will go to the one that knows how to yield. One of the things that we find very true as a pattern within the Tao is staying fluid, staying yielding, staying moldable and bendable. That seems to be a theme. Certainly fluidity is a theme with Lao Tzu. And, I won't labor and go back into a bunch about water, but y'all all know where I come from with water. Water and I have a great relationship. One of the best and most amazing revelations for me was this realization to really stop, when I stopped and thought about the reality that I'm 70 to 80% water. As a being, that the earth is 70 to 80% water. And that my mind, my brain, not my mind, but my brain is 80% water. So if somebody calls you a waterhead, it is a compliment. The ability to think in terms of yieldingness and flexibility and fluidity is a sign of intelligence. People who have rigid beliefs have revealed that in many ways they've cut off their intelligence. Intelligent people are able to think quickly, are able to shift on a curve, are able to take a pandemic without pandemonium, are able to hold their peace in the midst of panic. Because the fluidity itself gives you the ability to move around. Notice that a large boulder, a rock, will not stop the flow of water, because water is able to what? Move around it. Find another way. The water within your soul is always telling you, find another way. You're fine. You're okay. Find another way. It's the fluidity. I don't want to talk about water. I want to talk about this subject of having enemies. And I want to ask us for a few moments to imagine, and I wrote a bunch of this down today during my study. Imagine living a life where you create a practice out of these simple words. And these are the simple words that I am inviting us to practice. In my life, conflict will not lead to combat. In my life, conflict will not lead to combat. How do you deal with rough situations? How do you deal with situations where people are opposing you? Do you find yourself getting overtly angry, upset? Does it begin to distort your body? Then notice that battle within your own self starts to become your enemy. And it turns you, as the writing says here, it'll turn you into an enemy. In fact, it says that there is no greater misfortune than underestimating your enemy. Underestimating your enemy means thinking that he or she is evil. Thus, you destroy the three treasures, or the main treasure, and you become the enemy yourself. So say these words: in my life, conflict will not lead to combat. In my life, conflict will not lead to combat. I refuse to be caught in that space of having enemies. Let me read a few things that as I started looking at this idea of radical peace, what it might mean. And so I went to a book. There's an old book titled The Art of Peace. And I took a few lines from it. I literally picked it up, cracked it open, kind of like we used to do back in the day with the Bible. You know, you just let it fly open and boom, there I go. That's exactly really what I did today. And here's what it said. The wise warrior would not invite to battle and presume to control the circumstances. Instead, he considers his actions carefully and expects the unexpected. Now, what I'm sensing is being written here is that if you presume to control the circumstances around your conflict, if you just assume automatically that you're going to win and that you're in control of the circumstances, you're not going to be prepared for the unexpected. He goes on to say, he acts like the guest and not like the host. It's not his party. He is even hesitant about visiting it and would make other plans if possible. Think about that just a moment. He is the guest, not the host. It's not his party. When you go into a conflict, or you have a conflict with someone, opposing views, opposing ideas, can you treat every single one of them as if it's their party, it's not yours? You're simply their guest to the conversation. You're their guest to that tense moment. Remember that tension invites our attention so that we can prepare to create or determine a new intention. I'm going to talk about that a little more on Sunday. Tension invites our attention so that we can set a new intention. So when you're dealing with tension with someone else, act as if you've been invited to a party, not that you're the host of that battle. Therefore, he is reluctant to advance, even the slightest. He would rather retreat if that's at all possible. Moving forward is stepping into the unknown, but backwards you return to familiar territory. Are you able to deal with the ebb and the flow of conflict? When you come into conflict with someone, are you able to retreat back into your conscious self? Are you able to notice that moment when you start to move away from the way, when you start to get out of place with the Tao, when you start to move away from Holy Spirit, when you start to move away from love or compassion or inclusion. If you notice that, you begin to lose that feeling of connection with that person, whoever it may be you're in conflict with. When you notice that that's happening, allow yourself to retreat back into that space of Tao awareness, that consciousness that you really are. The knowing. Remember, we said a moment ago, I am the knowing. I am not the conflict that is known. That's another great one. Let's stay with that one. I am the knowing. I am not the conflict that is known. It's not that you're not going to ever have opponents, opposing views. It's not that you shouldn't speak up for yourself. In fact, you should speak up for yourself. But make sure you're speaking up for the true self and not the persona that has taken something personal and now attached it to your personality, creating a personal reality around this conflict. Also, the warrior who is eager to advance is the one who nurtures the illusion that war brings good things to the winner. Now, here's a line I wrote down, and I want you to think on this. There are no winners in war. Those who know this don't invite to it, nor do they hurry to advance into it. I'm going to say that again. There are no winners in war. Those who know this don't invite others to a war, and they don't hurry to advance into it. In other words, I refuse to pick a fight. I refuse to go to war with anyone, especially with the idea that I'm automatically the winner or I'm automatically right, because I know I'm already dealing with ego and operating in ego rather than with the Tao. It goes on to say in The Art of Peace, that's why the superior warrior grieves when forced to do battle. To him, it means that something failed and tragedy for all ensues. You see, what is spoken of in the Tao and is spoken of also in The Art of Peace is that there was a breakdown in communication that led to war. So the one who goes into war with someone else goes in grieving, not celebrating, but grieving, believing that in some way they failed the process by not communicating more succinctly and more openly and more transparently ahead of time. It is a belief in Taoist ideals and in The Art of Peace, of course. It is a belief that you can reach a state of consciousness that brings you into a constant state of stillness and peace with others and such a deep respect and compassion for others that you never get to the place where there's combat, even if there is conflict. It says here, his grief proves his superiority. Therefore, it's the sign of the winner. Since he regrets going to war, he is well prepared to avoid it. That's also the preparation to win it. A battle that you go into is always going to be won by the individual that knows nothing is won by going to war. If you end up in a conflict with someone, you're going to know. If you end up in combat, which is hopefully not ever going to happen, but if you end up in a very combative situation, it's going to be won by the one who knows that combat leaves no winners. In other words, the awareness that this is not going to lead to a win. It's sad that we're even here. I grieve over this as if I'm going to a funeral. This is what is spoken of in Lao Tzu's writings as he talks about soldiers going to war with a sense of grief as if they're going to a funeral, not with a sense of celebration. Because if a conflict leads to combat, it's because during the conflict stage, I was unable to stay with the consciousness and alignment with Tao, alignment with the Holy Spirit, alignment with the principles of Jesus the Christ. Jesus said, love your enemies. What do you think he meant by that? Love your enemies enough to not be at combat with them. Conflict, maybe. Opposition, maybe. But combat, no. Let love be the rule. Let compassion be the rule. Let kindness be the rule. Let gentleness be the rule. And don't desire to win or to beat someone else. In fact, if an argument leads to a winner, but it doesn't lead to progress, that argument is to no avail. Now, it goes on to say in one of the other translations, it talks about grabbing without arms. And then I looked for an explanation. I was trying to figure out a translation for this. And essentially it means this: grabbing without arms is an expression that can be compared to using one's arms without rolling up the sleeves. There's an old, back in the day, when they used to do battle, what they called, the battle of those who were civil. I've never understood the civility of war, but I do understand after the study today a little more of the reason why battles were done back in the day the way they were. You know how they'd bring both armies out into the valley? And they would essentially stand there. They're all just looking at each other. Somebody would finally yell something and they would go to war. If you've seen any of the movies like Troy, or if you've seen the movies like Braveheart, Braveheart's the one I remember the most because I'm slightly obsessed with Scotland. Just like, they met each other on the battlefield. One of the reasons William Wallace led such a powerful revolt was because they started doing war differently. They said that, the British said that he fought dirty. I think ultimately all warring is dirty, but he did fight dirty in comparison to what they called gentleman's war. And essentially, back in the day, it was a rule that if you were going to hit someone, that you were supposed to roll up your sleeves first to give them fair warning. Did you know that? Isn't that odd? That before you hit someone, you were supposed to roll up your sleeves first. So part of this reference of grabbing without arms is a reference to that. It's an expression about rolling up your sleeves as a warning before going into conflict. And one of the reasons they would roll up their sleeves was in hope that whoever they were about to clobber would say, never mind, I'm not going to fight. Interesting, isn't it? That's how the line is usually translated. And when force is used, it should be announced or displayed first. And when force is used, it should be done with a sense of grief. Because I've had people say, well, I hear you're nonviolent, peace, love, and war, and recycle, and compassion, and what are you going to do if somebody comes in and tries to harm your family? I'm going to do everything I can to protect them. But as I've mentioned to you before, I'm going to do it not with a sense of celebration, but I will do it with a sense of regret and deep pain. Would I ever be violent? It is a possibility that you could get me violent, especially if you threatened the ones I love dearly. But I would not do it with a sense of celebration. We've gotten to the place in this country where we are in a constant sense of combat, where we become extremely uncivil with each other, and we think that's okay. In some way, we've had some leadership in the past that's given us permission to say things that we never would have thought about saying before. And in some ways, social media has helped us because we all of a sudden get a real sense of what I call social media guts as we sit in front of a screen with a keyboard and we say things, type things that we would never say in person. It's that degree of separation that gives us the psychological ability to attack vehemently, attack others, and then if the person on the other side takes it personal and they attach it to their personality, then of course now you've got a combative situation. We need to get ourselves into a space of compassion and love and kindness where we can deal with conflict before it becomes combat. What is it in your life that seems to be a constant battle, a war? It could be solved with simply deciding that I'm not going to start a fight anymore. I refuse to. In fact, I'm going to lead us in that. And I want to take us back to the original confession that I would like for us to make, or a vow that we would like to make. In my conflict, in my life, this is the statement, in my life, conflict will not lead to combat. Type that, somebody type that in the comments. In my life, conflict will not lead to combat. In other words, I refuse to allow it to. Now, here's what I want us to do for the next week or so when you have a situation arise. Number one, refuse to see anyone as your enemy. An opponent, maybe, but an enemy, no. Refuse to see anyone as your enemy. Yes, the first person that came to mind just then, that's the one that you need to reduce to an opponent, not an enemy. And number two, vow to never start a fight. Vow, moving forward, that you will never start a fight. Can you fight? Are you good at it? Are you intelligent enough to fight, to have a mental joust? I'm sure you are. That's ego. Vow to never start a fight. And lastly, practice this idea. In fact, if you would receive a deep breath right now. Allow your heart and your mind to listen, to hear this for just a moment. I believe that everyone and everything is connected to me and in some way is teaching me. I send love to all. Once again, I believe that everyone and everything is connected to me and in some way teaching me. I send love to all. And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. Remember, in every conflict, I am the knowing, not the conflict, that I know is happening whenever it's happening. So again, number one, refuse to see anyone as an enemy. And number two, vow to never start a fight. And repeat this within your own self. I believe that everyone and everything is connected to me and in some way teaching me. I send love to all. And so it is. In my life, conflict will not lead to combat. I refuse. That's Tao, verse 69. And I want to say once again, thank you so much for being here, for being present in this place, for supporting this community, not only with your presence here during these events, but also with your offerings and your gifts. And I want to say thank you for giving and continuing to support. On the screen right now are some opportunities for support. Thank you for giving. If you've not given to this community before, please consider doing so this week. We could use your support. You can do that through check or money order to our P.O. Box, or you can do that through PayPal or Venmo, either one. And if you don't have either one of those and you prefer Cash App or Zelle, let me know. Just send me an inbox message and I can help you with that as well. And it will count against your income tax return next year. This is a 501c3. Thank you so much for being here this evening. And you know I love ya. Tomorrow we have our meditation, so we invite you to join every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of each week, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our friends in other time zones, like Nick is in another time zone. I mean, our friends Nello and Melanie in other time zones, and Patricia, one of our board members, is in another time zone, and Karen, they're in another time zone. I mean, look, there's folks who join us from all over the world and around this country, of course, every single Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we just want to continue this practice. Thank you so much for being here. Now, go and make it a great day, because you can. Peace.